Hey guys, welcome to CPM 2. This is Module 4, Lesson 6. This is actually your last lesson in CPM 2, so we'll celebrate at the end of this video. Alright, first objective. We are writing percent problems as equations. So it says right here that we need to recognize keywords as percent problems. It's going to be helpful in these problems to write them as equations. So we have 3 keywords. So when you see the word of, that means multiplication. That one we should already know. When we see is, that means your equal sign. That one we should also already know. And whenever we read the word what, that is our unknown number, and we're going to let X stand for any of our unknown numbers. So you literally keep this in order. When you see of, we'll put a multiplication. When we see is, we put equals. When we see what, that's where my X goes. So, example 1, translating to equations. A says 5 is what percent of 20? So, we'll start with 5. The word is means my equal sign. What percent is my X? Of means times. And then drop down your 20. Just keep it right there in order. So now we'll clean this up a little bit. This X times 20, let's simplify that to a 20X. So we'll have 5 equals 20X. Okay, so if you can kind of clean it up some, it is better to do that. B, same thing, 1.2 is, that's my equal sign, 30%. So here, because we are talking about a percent, we do need that symbol in there. Of means multiplication. And then what number is my X? This one we can't really clean up very much. Because of that percent sign, we kind of want this little dot, that little multiplication symbol in there. So we've got 1.2 equals 30% of times our X. Okay, so if you can't clean it up, but they can't all be cleaned up. On C, what number is 25% of 0.008? So what number is my X? Is my equal sign. 25% just simply comes down. Of is my percent, or is my times, and then this decimal 0.008. This is another one that we can't really clean up too much, so we'll just kind of rewrite it down here. So X equals 25% times 0.008. Pretty straightforward. D, what percent of 85 is 34? So what percent is my X? Of is my multiplication. 85 comes down. Is my equal sign. 34 comes down. So this one we can clean up. X times 85 is 85X. So you've got 85X equals 34. Okay, 2 more, exact same things. 38% of 200 is what number? So my percent comes down, 38%. Of is my multiplication. 200 comes down. Is means equals. And what number is my X? Again, because of that percent and that times, I can't really do anything with that. So we'll just rewrite it the way it looks. And then last one, 40% of what number is 80? So 40% comes down. Of is my multiplication. What number is my X? Is means equals, and 80 comes down. Can't really do any cleaning up, so 40% times X equals 80. So if you notice, the only ones that we can really clean up is when I have like x times a number, x times a number. When you have that percent in there, there's not really anything you can do to make that look a little bit nicer. Okay, so on the next page, not only are we going to have to rewrite these equations so that we can solve it, but now we're actually going to have to solve it. So it's writing these equations and solving. Now, if you kind of notice up here, we are going over two sections. These two sections, we're doing the same thing, but they show you two different techniques. And so because of that, on this next page here, we're going to solve the same problems in two different ways. The first way we're going to solve these problems is by writing the equation, so what we did on the last page, and then solving for x. The second way we're going to do this is by a proportion. And so it says right here, you can solve percent problems by writing the equation and then solving, or you can use the equation. The equation that we're going to use, and it sounds really weird, but it's super, super simple. The proportion is over of equals percent over 100. Okay, so just kind of put that in your back pocket for now. We'll go over that here on this example 2a the second time. So on example 2, part A here, says what number is 35% of 60? So write your equation. This what number is my x, is means equals, 35% comes down, of means to times, and then 60 comes down. So after we rewrite this equation, now I need to solve. And before we can solve, I can't really solve an equation with a percent in here. So we need to take this percent and change it to a decimal. And so this is what we were doing last lesson. To change this percent to a decimal, you can either 1 divide by 100, so do 35 divided by 100, and that will get you 0.35, or just simply move the decimal 2 places to the left. So it's right here behind this 5, so you move it 1, 2 places. Whichever method you use, you're going to get that 0.35. So now we have x equals 0.35 times 60. So put that in your calculator. We got 0.35 times 60, and we get x to be 21. Okay, so not hard, not difficult. Okay, but you do need to know how to change a percent to a decimal. So over here, we got the exact same problem, so hopefully we get x is 21 again. But now let's use this percentage here. So whatever your percent is always going to go in that percentage sign. So I see 35%, so that means we're going to have 35 over 100. Okay, and this 100 is always a constant as well. Here you have an of 60, so that needs to go right here where your of is. So 60 goes down here, and so now I don't know what my is, and so we'll have an x here at the top. So 2 lessons ago in lesson 4, you learned how to solve proportions. You just cross multiply. So I like to cross multiply wherever that x is first. So I'm going to do x times 100 to get 100x. Cross multiply the other way, 60 times 35, which is 2100. So then to get x by itself, divide by 100. And so yes, we get x equals 21. Okay, so let's do B the same way. We're going to solve all of these in 2 different ways, and then when we go to that next page, you're going to choose whichever method you like. So on B, 12% of what number is 0.6? So bring down your 12%. Of means to multiply. What number is your x? is your equal sign, and then your 0.6 comes down. So same thing, I need to change this percent to a decimal. So we're either doing 12 divided by 100, or you're simply just moving that decimal 2 places to the left. We're going to get 0.12. So I've got 0.12x equals 0.6. So now to get x by itself, divide both sides by 0.12. So 0.6 divided by 0.12 gives me 5. Okay, same thing here on B. Use your percent. Is over of equals percent over 100. So in this one, I'm given 12%. So I know I'm going to have 12 over 100. This one says is 0.6. So my 0.6 will go where my is. So that means my x goes where my of is. So cross multiply. I'm going to cross multiply this way first to get my x. So I've got 12x equals 0.6 times 100 is going to give me 60. Divide both sides by 12 to get x by itself, and we're going to get x is 5 again. And then the last one here on C. What percent of 12 is 9? So, what percent is my x? Of means to multiply. My 12 comes down. Is my equal sign, and then bring down your 9. So this is that one where we can clean it up a little bit. X times 12 means 12x. So I get 12x equals 9. Divide both sides by 12. And we're going to get x equals 0.75. Now we're not done on this one, because this one specifically asks for what percent. I haven't found what percent, I have found the decimal. So to change this to a percent, go the opposite way, you either need to multiply this by 100 or move this decimal 2 places over to the right. Either way, we're going to get 75% as our answer. So on C, what percent of 12 is 9? So here we have is 9. So that's going to go in place of my is. Of 12 means that's going in place of my of. This time I'm wanting to know what percent. So I've got x over 100. So cross multiply again. I'm going where the x is. So we've got 12x equals 9 times 100 gives me 900. And then divide by 12. And we get x is 75. And so again, what percent? So we'll call that 75%. Okay, so hopefully you've kind of decided which method you like. On this next page here, we're going to have 4 more examples, and I'll do 2 one way, 2 the other way, for whichever method you prefer. I will tell you right now that I prefer this proportion method. 1, I think proportions are super easy to solve, but 2, if you noticed, in this column here with your equations, you're constantly having to move that decimal, right? We went from a percent to a decimal. Here we went from a percent to a decimal. Here my answer was a decimal and I needed to put it into a percent. So There's less work on this one, in my opinion, because it already has that percent over 100. It's already dealing with moving that decimal in the way that it needs to go. So I prefer this proportions one. So I'm actually going to change my mind and only do one more in this method that I don't like, and I'm going to do the rest in proportions. So I'll start off on this page with the equation. So if you like the equation, on A it says 12% of what number is 47. So 12% comes down. My of means to multiply. What number is my x? Is my equal sign. And then bring down your 47. So 12% means we're either doing 12 divided by 100 to get 0.12, or you're taking that 12 and moving it over 1, 2 to the left. So that means I have 0.12x equals 47. So divide both sides by 0.12. So 47 divided by 0.12. And we get a decimal. We're going to get 391 point. That 6 is going to keep repeating, so I'll just go ahead and put 6 with that bar over it. All right. So that's your equation. I'm going to do the rest of these by proportion. So your proportion, I'm going to write it up here. And this will have to be memorized for your test. But it's is over of equals percent over 100. So here it says 101 is what percent of 200. So kind of notice some things. I know my of is 200. So I'll put 200 here on the bottom. It's asking me what percent, so I know I'm solving for this percent over here. So that does leave this 101 to be my is. All right, cross multiply. I'm going to get that x first. So I've got 200x equals 101 times 100 is going to give me 10,100. So then divide both sides by 200. And we will get 50.5. Okay. B again, which should be C. What number is 90% of 45? So I have of 45 again. So I know that's going to go down here where my of is. This one has 90%, so I'm going to have a 90 over 100. So that leaves my is to be my unknown. So cross multiply. We're going to get 100x this way. 90 times 45 is 405. Divide by 100. And we get 4.05. And then D, what percent of 30 is 75? So here is my is. So I've got 75 over of 30. So that goes down here. And then I'm wanting to know what percent, so x over 100. So cross multiply. We get 38 x equals 75 times 100. It's going to give me 7,500. Divide both sides by 30. And we will get x equals 250. Now with this one, and we should have done it with another one, we're going to go back up and correct it. When I get 250, because this one's wanting to know what percent, you need to make sure that percent sign goes onto your answer. So what percent? That's 250%. So same thing should have happened over here on B when it wanted to know what percent. This needed to be 50.5%. So be careful when it does ask for a percent. Make sure you put that percent sign on there with it. All right, and that's really and truly all for this lesson. This example 4 I put on here because this is on my math lab, and they're picky with this one here. In your book, they call these percent portions the amount over base, that's your is over of, equals your percent over 100. And so on this question here, it's wanting you to use A and B and P if you don't know something. So instead of how we were putting like X right here, they would want this to be a P. Instead of us putting in X right here, they would want an A because that's what this is right here. If it was ever missing this bottom part here, it would want a B. Okay, so it's just going to get picky on what variable you use when you write this. So it says, translate the question to a proportion. It specifically says, do not solve. Okay, so I'm literally just setting up this proportion. Use A if the unknown is the amount, B if the unknown is the base, and P if the unknown is the percent. So your question is, what number is 36% of 136? So this of needs to go in place of my of, in place of what they're calling the base. We have 36%, so I know I've got 36 over 100. Here's the catch on this. Instead of putting X here, because I don't know the amount, don't put X, put A. Okay, and so that's the answer you're typing into my math lab. And so I wanted to do one example of that just because it is going to get picky on that variable. All right, that's all I've got for this lesson. And once you are done with your